What's up, everyone? It is Physio Monday. Make sure you get your questions in if you're in the UMS Movement Mastermind. But today we are going to be, the topic of discussion is going to be overstretching. A lot of people do this. A lot of people stretch and then they feel a lot of pain the following days after. We're going to talk about what to do if that's you.
What's up, tribe? My name is Yanni Burmeister. I'm graced with the presence of Phil White, Rad, my brother, and Richie behind the camera. How are you guys?
Feeling graceful.
I'm feeling graceful.
Pretty good. I'm coming in hot. I was a bit delayed in leaving, trying to find my bike lock, but I realised it's on my other bike. Problem with being a bike nut and having too many bikes. So I've just zoomed in here on my bike, hot and sweaty for those who have the joy of watching me on the camera. But
coming in hot.
Today, as Rad said, we're on Physio Monday, so we're answering questions related to performance and injury management. Guys, if you want to know a little bit about how we turn driven people into superhumans, remember you can download our free blueprints. If you're catching on the replay on YouTube or listening on the podcast, hello, welcome, sending you some love. Now, question of the day. We want to know if you've ever overstretched. Have you felt like you've pushed it? What happened? Was it an immediate discomfort, immediate pain, or did you experience it days later? We call that DOMS for stretching. Let us know your experiences, and we'll see if we can get a discussion going here on the live stream. But let's build some context around here, Rad. So why don't you read out Lucio's comment? Now, this comment has come from the UMS online coaching group. Lucio is an online coaching member of ours. If you guys haven't joined our online coaching group, why not? It is incredible. Quick shameless plug there. You can read the comment and maybe Richie can bring it up on the screen for those watching live.
Yep. Okay. So Lucio has said, yesterday and today I did the stretches between sets, the Wednesdays and Thursdays stretches. For those of you that don't know what that means, he's referring to our UMS online coaching program. And now I have very bad DOMS in the thighs, internal side. The pain goes all the way up internal. I feel it also in my, and then he's in speech brackets written intestine, which I think he means he's referring to, that's just like where he points to where he feels it. I think I pushed too much on the hip flexors. What do you recommend?
Sounds like hip flexor if he's talking about intestines.
Yeah. So yeah, you definitely haven't overstretched your intestine, that's for sure. But the hip flexor does come right up and cross onto. One of them connects
let's let Phil, who actually knows a little bit more about anatomy, to talk about.
Well, let's let me, who knows somewhat about anatomy, say my opinion, and then I'll see if I'm right or not. So the psoas connects onto the lumbar, right? Is that correct? The lumbar spine, and then the iliacus connects to the iliac crest, right? Which is the top of the pelvis,
which is on the inside of the pelvis.
Yep, and they're commonly known as the iliopsoas, which is referring to that. It's two different muscles that come down and connect, and both connect onto the front.
It's actually three. There's also a psoas minor that's in there, but it's pretty weeny and doesn't do a whole lot. So.
Doesn't do a whole lot. It's good that it's interesting that Lucio said he feels it up into his intestine, because if you've ever had a psoas released by a therapist, they literally push through
your
guts,
intestines.
They
push through your shit and
pretty accurate where you go on there, because there's a whole lot going on inside. So it's I don't know. It's one of those kind of controversial sort of treatments, because a lot of people sort of say like, oh, you're not even affecting it. But it's quite interesting. Like when I do it, I can feel if you get them to contract into hip flexion, you can feel it coming on, but I don't think it's too useful.
Right. Yeah. So look, the first thing I'm going to say is, if you're saying that you feel discomfort on the internal side of your thigh, then you've done a few different things going on here, because that isn't the hip flexors on the inside of the thigh. Those are adductors. And if you've done Wednesday's stretching, that's the middle splits where you're doing the adductors, and Thursdays is for the hip flexors.
Well, because you've got the sartorius and all the there's a system of muscle that kind of crosses through that, isn't there? Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without having him point to exactly where it is, but at the front of your thigh, you've got your quads, obviously, that cover the most of the anterior, so the front side of your thigh, with your rec fem smack bang in the middle being a hip flexor as well as a knee extender, so that's a hip flexor. And then with your iliopsoas, that actually comes down to the lesser trochanter of your femur, which is sort of a bit more tucked inside there. So, someone might say sort of on the inside there, your pectineus is kind of at the front and to the medial side as well. And then, obviously your adductors are and sartorius over the top, but that crosses down more along the knee joint. So when, I guess, giving these examples and questions, it's like the more specific you can be is really good. So is it the top on the inside, or is it further down? And that's a good thing to understand. So when it comes to this, the initial thing, like, you've always got to think of try and get like kind of differential diagnosis, because obviously it's tempting to just say like, oh yeah, it's a psoas strain, or you've overdone it, but there could be other structures at play here. So the kind of things you want to think about is with anything sort of abdominal, you want to start thinking, is there potentially a hernia here? So whether or not like overstretching through because the adductors attach onto the inguinal ligament, and that it's that sort of Adonis belt looking thing you see in people who are pretty ripped. And if you're feeling discomfort around that area, it's where your adductors attach. That can also be an inguinal hernia, and that can feel more like gutsy intestinally. You might even for males have pain in your testicle as well. So it's really important to try and be clear about what's actually going on in there, because it might just be a bit of a hip flexor strain. You might have just pushed a bit too hard. But if you're getting pain on coughing, sneezing, doing like a resisted sit-up's a really good way of testing. So if you're doing a sit-up and sort of having someone push down on you as you come up, that's a pretty good way of testing if there's maybe something else at play there, because it's just really important to get the stuff right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
what would you like? Would you recommend, Phil, that you do this sort of standard 3-day recovery thing that you talk about, where you say wait 3 days and see if the pain's decreased before you go
what
to
Rod's talking about there, just for anyone who hasn't kind of heard before, is that like if you have an acute injury where you have like a definite mechanism of action where it's pretty clear you just injured a thing, and then it's taking some time to heal. It's not a slow onset. It's not an insidious onset.
It's like you did a workout and then later on that day you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, so the kind of classic acute inflammatory pathway is generally around that sort of 72 hour, 3-day mark. And that Peace and Love article I keep talking about and linking in these comments is the British Journal of Sports Medicine about acute injury management. So I think like if you aren't getting any like concerning, sinister pains like this sort of, coughing, sneezing, testicular or abdominal ache, like if there's none of that and it just feels like a muscle strain, then certainly leave it sort of 3 days, start bringing in a bit more load, and then get back to, just gradual progressive
But if after
load.
3 days, if you forget about those sinister symptoms that you were just talking about, but if after 3 days, if the pain is still there, that's when you'd recommend going to see a physio and get a further diagnosis.
Well, I think like if you can, obviously, like the earlier you can get like a good diagnosis, the better, really, because if there is something else going on, like you want to have a professional who has the ability to find that out. But you can totally understand a lot of people, don't want to do that. It costs money to go do that, and so just letting it sort of play its course and let natural healing is a reasonable thing to do.
If you can afford the consultation, wouldn't it be better to go early because there's more feedback happening early?
Yeah, but the other thing is when you go super early, it's often like, if I have like an acute person coming in, it's like, okay, everything hurts around that area, and there's not loads you can do. Like it's really hard to kind of get them actually loading it up. But getting a good plan early on, I think is good, and reassurance that it's what we think about. It is what we think it is.
Sorry, can I just step in here and hit the rewind button, because I know that there's going to be people out there who listen to this and don't understand the mechanisms of stretching and don't understand why you can overstretch, why you might experience DOMS after stretching, because it's considered very different to strength training. So why don't we just give a little bit of context around the mechanism of stretching, the concept that we talk about a lot on the show, which is that stretching is a load to the body and must be considered part of your loading program, and then and because for those newbies out there who may not do a lot of flexibility training, who may not be very experienced in stretching, they might be going, well, hang on, how can you get this experience from stretching? Isn't stretching really passive and relaxing and zen and So let's just talk about that, because and talk about some of the different mechanisms of flexibility training that we use, like eccentric stretching.
Let me just have my quick little rant about flexibility and stretching, where people definitely think there's this kind of thing in the zeitgeist that that stretching is inherently therapeutic and has some magical property of healing. It doesn't. It's a load. You have to deal with that load, and you have to progressively overload that load. Otherwise, you'll hurt yourself. Yeah. So yeah, stretching is not always the answer. If muscle's tight, it's usually because it can't cope with the stimulus you're putting it under, and maybe the answer is more stretching, but it's more likely more strength.
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah,
that's my little rant.
Yeah, without a doubt, the most common course of action that people seem to come up with for themselves when they feel pain and discomfort or a chronic injury is they say, I just need to stretch it out more. And it's very rarely the case. That's very rarely what the answer is. Stretching when you are a stiff and unflexible person and you have chronic discomfort in your body can definitely be something that gives you an immediate deloading of that pain or decreasing of that pain and discomfort. A lot of people experience that, and it is a part of what we recommend that people do. But yeah, if you've got injuries, it's rarely the solution.
People are often quite astounded by the results that they get with the UMS, especially when they come and train at Unity Gym. And some of these people have been doing yoga for many, many years. We've had yogis come in who are 20-year veterans who in 6 months access ranges that they've never been able to access before. And the key to it all is that we have a 1-to-1 ratio of strength and flexibility. Yeah. We do not allow people to progress in flexibility without building a foundation of strength first. And that, a lot of people find it really frustrating. I've seen this many times with clients of ours where they've sort of neglected physical exercise for quite some time, meaning that they're not only stiff and tight feeling and lacking flexibility, they're also lacking a lot of strength. And they get, this notion that, okay, I'm sore, I'm hurting, so the first thing I'm going to do is go and try and develop some flexibility. But they don't get, it's like butting their head against a brick wall. They don't get anywhere with their flexibility training because they're not addressing the weakness that's there. And the body's not going to allow that increase of range of movement easily without first developing a little bit of strength,
Yeah, it ends up being those things where people are like, and it's kind of telling in how people say it. They're like, I just haven't done enough stretching lately and this comes back. And it's like, yeah, it keeps coming back because you're not like trying anything new. And it's the same with massage, the same with chiropractic, like the same with, hands-on manual therapy with physio. Like people often think of it as like they need this sort of maintenance thing where it's really like, well, what are you doing to address the underlying cause of it? Issue, and stretching is often one of those things that people use as like a maintenance just to feel okay, but they never get to the point where they're actually feeling good because their structure is still underloaded strength-wise and can't deal with the stuff you're putting in on.
We used to have an ongoing thing, and when I was a mechanical engineer for many years before being a personal trainer, and you'd often get people come in to replace a part, and why the part keeps wearing out. It could be a wheel alignment issue, and they keep having to replace their tires, which is very, very expensive. And you're like, well, can we realign the wheels so the tires don't wear out? No, I don't have time for that. I can't afford that right now. It's an extra $100 and the tires are $700 or something, and you're like, you serious? Like, just let us do a wheel alignment, or just let us change the part that's causing the problem, and it'll cost a little bit more now, but you're not going to be back in 6 months' time to get your tires replaced again or whatever, and it's sort of like, that's what we look at with an imbalance in strength and flexibility, like people generally want to do the least path of resistance, which is natural, that's human nature, but they neglect one thing that makes it, which enables the other thing, and that's why you need to have an approach with your training where you're not just addressing the one thing. It may very much feel like you need that one thing, and you may even have some idiot tell you that you need just this one thing, but it's very rarely the case. You got to look at performance and health and feeling good as a holistic thing. You address, you need to sort of address it all. You can't just address one thing and think that your problems are going to be solved.
But let's bring it back in onto topic. So let's go back to Luca, and now that we've Lucio, sorry.
And just before we do, anyone who is watching live, would you like to take live questions about this stuff? So bonus points if it's a stretching question. A flexibility, physio related question, but any physio questions you have, get it down now. It's the joy of tuning in live.
Yeah. So if you're tuning in live, get them in quick because we've got 15 minutes left. But so let's presume, now that we've gone through our whole big disclaimers of what it could and couldn't not be, but let's presume that it is exactly what he says, and he's done a stretching session, he's had an acute injury, and now he feels pain and discomfort in the muscles. So what's happened almost certainly is that you have poor load management, which means that you've overstretched, which means you've gone too far and you've torn micro tears in your muscles, small tears. Lots of people have different names for it, but it is pretty much muscle tears, isn't it, Phil? If when you do these things, yeah.
Yep.
People say strain, overdone it,
strain,
whatever it is, but it's basically a small tears in the muscles.
A level of tear.
Yeah, a level of tear.
Yeah.
So the answer,
the simple answer is starts with a P and finishes with an O. Progressive overload.
Yeah, that's right.
We didn't progress it enough. Well, okay, well,
So what you need to do, Lucio, is you need to understand that you've gone too far, and this is what we talk about all the time. We say when you stretch, you should go to the point of discomfort, but not to the point of pain. And people say, how do I know that? And it's subjective. It's completely different. My level of pain will be very different to your level.
Lucio will now know.
But unfortunately, this is what I say to people. I say, how do you know? You know once you overdo it.
Yeah.
Once you overdo it, what you need to do now, Lucio, is you need to reflect back on that session, on those 2 sessions, and really think about what you felt and what you experienced during those sessions. And then you need to understand that you don't go that far next time.
Yeah, you got to see the injury as an opportunity to learn and know for the next time how you can do it better, and it's how these guys have learned. And
it's tricky because you got to remember if you've done the workout properly, you'll be warm, and your pain tolerance will have raised quite substantially. So you're not going to feel pain when if you were cold, it would have felt painful. You know, so it does. There is an element of trial and error there. But you're better off always, as we're taught as young personal trainers, you're better off progressing people slower and making the mistake of undershooting than progressing too fast and making the mistake of overshooting. Because the overshoot is really stifling and the undershoot is only marginally stifling.
Well, it's not stifling at all, the undershoot. It's just that it's a part of the process and maybe it takes a little bit longer. But so a strategy for you, Lucio, and for anybody that has had an acute overuse stretching injury is you now need to reduce the load on your body but keep doing the same thing. So the way you'll do that is you'll reduce intensity. So in this case, intensity refers to how hard you push, how far you pull your legs apart, how much load you pull on the muscles. But you still want to go to a point where you still stimulate the load in there. Would you agree, Phil?
Yep.
I learnt this from Phil because my approach to overstretching in the past was that I would just avoid it. And Phil said to me, no, I wouldn't do that. I'd probably still do it, but just do it at a reduced load, which means now I tore my adductors so many times on the road to the splits. And for those of you that are on the podcast, you can't see this, but what I'm showing with my hands is I'm demonstrating how far I used to be able to get. So let's say I could get this far, which was at almost 180 degrees, and then I'd tear my adductors. And then for the next couple of weeks, I would be stretching to about this far, which was about 90 degrees or 100 degrees. And I'd get to that point where I could just feel that I was like, whoa, I don't want to go further than that. So I was still stimulating the muscles, and I was doing it.
Was there an active component to that?
I was doing it.
Just a light isometric?
Even if there wasn't, I would recommend 100% that you only would do it actively, so in an isometric contraction. So like the active middle splits in this case, or the diagonal stretch for the hip flexors, because that, and we'll talk about that in just a sec, why. Good point though, Phil. And then what would happen is that over the next couple of weeks, the tear would heal, my tolerance would increase, and I would be smarter with how far I went. Unfortunately for me, that took me about 6 to 12 months to become smart, and I stifled my progress a lot, but I didn't know what I know now.
I think this is a really good time to sort of dive in and talk about the mechanism of stretching, because everything that we're talking about here you tend to do when you're approaching your flexibility training as though you're stretching muscles longer, like plasticine. And we talk about this a lot. That is not, it's got nothing to do with the process. The process of becoming more flexible is a brain adaptation. It's not a muscular adaptation. I mean, you can say it's a bit of everything, but its majority is what's happening in the central nervous system and the brain. The brain starting to understand that there is that range that's okay, we can access it, and it doesn't happen without developing a little bit of strength along the way as well. So, you know, if you approach your stretching thinking that your body is sort of like plasticine or some malleable product that you can stretch out, then you're going to overdo it, because there's this notion that, if I just push harder, I'll get a deeper stretch, a longer stretch, you know. And this is why we somewhat discourage or don't use a lot of passive stretching in our program, because when you're passively stretching, you're missing the strength component entirely. You know, it's kind of like it's a therapeutic thing more than a development of flexibility thing, you know.
As a disclaimer, we do use passive stretching in our mobility routines, but not in our flexibility programs.
Yeah.
And our brain likes controls, like in positions. So if you can add in those, you know, like loaded strengthening eccentrics and isometrics, it's your brain's like, hey, don't worry, I got control here. So it builds up that ability.
It speeds up the process. To put it simply, it speeds up the process, you know, and that's the only way you can speed up the process of getting more flexible is to get stronger at the same time. You know, that is the big secret, guys. That's the aha moment. That is
or Botox into the muscles.
That is, or what's that?
Botox into the
muscles.
Botox
into the muscles. Yeah, you got those two choices.
Do not do
so there's a lot of methods that we use to develop this, but the one that we'll talk about today, which is the one that we all agree at this table is the best one to get started with, is loaded eccentrics. And the loaded eccentrics are what we use in the UMS Foundations Program. It's what we do between sets in the UMS Foundations Program. And Lucio, for you, this is guaranteed all you should be doing for those muscles that you have torn until they repair. You should do loaded eccentrics and isometrics. And Phil, do you want to talk about what you understand about why loaded eccentrics are so effective?
And Sharon Lynn, who's watching here, listen up to this one, because this is really important.
Time.
So she's just said here, I think I can't do bouncy movements while I stretch. That tends to be how I hurt myself stretching. And that's exactly right. So with the loaded eccentrics, it's a great way to gain control in end range. So you're taking the muscle through a full range of motion under load, and you're controlling that end of range. And it's when you get into these sort of bouncy ballistic stuff, it's a whole nother stress that you have to take. And I wouldn't be doing them until you've done some serious eccentric control, because it's just like with the FIFA 11 program that's been so effective for soccer players having less hamstring injuries. When you build up that strength through heavy eccentric loading, it means that they can then control their like hard swinging leg as they kick or sprint, and that's a fairly end range position, which then leads to less tears. So this is exactly what you want to do to build up tolerance to lengthening under load and building that control. So the reason why is basically with the body will adapt to what you spend your time doing. So if you can be in those lengthened positions and you can put a whole bunch of load through there, your body will be better at doing it in very simple terms.
And I just really want to drive this home again before we go any further, and we will get through all these comments. I cannot stress this enough, guys. If you are not approaching your flexibility training from both angles, where you're developing both strength and flexibility, and this is why we love the Unify movement system, because it brings this together in such a nice way, then you're not going to be getting very good results, and you're also putting yourself at risk, and of really becoming more fragile in the process, and no one wants that. You know, you want to be strong in your ranges of movement, and you want to be able to demonstrate force, demonstrate power in those end ranges. Otherwise, what are we stretching for? You know, is it? It's like. It's almost like what I call spinal masturbation, when you go and get your back cracked up, which I love. I do it all the time, but it's kind of like muscle masturbation. You know, you kind of like, it's medicinal. That's it. There's no function to it whatsoever.
And there is a lot to it, and I understand that for a lot of you, when you hear this stuff, it almost confuses you more than it answers your question. And if that's you, then don't worry. We've done the work for you and put it into an amazing program, and that's the UMS Foundations Program. And if you want to get it, grab it now. It's on sale for the next day and a half. It is a shameless plug, but it works, and it's going 100%. To answer your questions, and it's going to give you a roadmap to your success.
There's a very, very specific reason why we start with that program, why we start with eccentrically loaded stretching. It's just the best way to start that progressive overload process, and build that strength and build that confidence in the body, and lay the foundation. It's all there.
It's all there.
The great thing with the eccentric again is that you can also really control how much, like, you can progressively overload by putting different amounts of weight into each of the exercises, and it's much easier to control again than just trying to find that sweet spot with stretching. So it's a great way as a foundation to build up that tolerance in a very controlled way. And then when you start to get into the more funky stuff like the mobility masterclass and flexibility one, then that's where you want to have that foundation of understanding your sort of sweet spot of how much you can push it before you tackle those, because otherwise you just setting yourself up for a bit of a harder
absolutely.
time.
And the other thing about that Foundations program that's very, very important to understand is that all of the exercises and all of the apparatus that it uses are designed to take your joints through their full range of movement. So you're not just developing strength and confidence in the eccentric loaded stretches, you're also developing strength in proper strength training modalities. You're doing deep dumbbell chest press to really open up the shoulders and develop the pec strength, and you're doing all of the movements that you should be doing in that early foundation stage to learn scapular control and get your body moving through full range of movement. Really nice split squats to take the hips through their full range of movement. It's all there, it's such a great way to get started. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So the look, let's get into these questions. We're going to answer all your questions now. Quack, listen up, because I know that your question's down the bottom there, but I'm going to answer it. I'm going to give you a very specific answer to that question. So Lee is saying, I'm learning to manage pain versus discomfort. That's awesome, Lee. And
Lee, you're doing some amazing those videos you posted
yeah,
the other day. Looking really good.
You're looking really good. And just remember, the road to flexibility is not linear. Like sometimes you stretch and you, for whatever reason, you just can't get as far as you could the day before. Those are the days where you really have to just eat a bit of humble pie and just go through the motions and don't try and force yourself to go. That's how I injured myself more than anything. When I was looking at my middle splits and I was going, man, I was like 10 degrees further in my last session. What am I doing? And I really forced it. And then I tore muscles. For whatever reason, my nervous system just didn't want me to go there that day, and you just got to take it with a grain of salt. And
that can be your activities the day before, that can be your sleep, it can be all stressful all sorts of stuff.
But that's fine. That's just what it is, and you just do it. So Quack is saying, to answer to the question of the day, he's saying, no, I haven't torn muscles because I listened to you guys when I first started stretching and doing the loaded stretching and going to discomfort, not pain. That's awesome, Quack, and it's just been so good to see your progress, brother. Diane is saying, my recovery between workouts and flexibility gains have significantly improved since differentiating between discomfort and pain. Yeah, it's awesome. So good, isn't it? Such a good thing to understand. And then Lee's saying, I can't hasten my body. I've got to be patient. Yeah, that's so true. Really, really glad to hear you guys dropping some great knowledge bombs here from listening to our stuff. Yeah. Now, Quack has said, any advice on getting over plateauing with stretching? I feel stuck in the middle splits. I've done consistent work for 11 months, but the last 2 to 3 months, the middles are not getting lower. I have some very, very good advice for you, Quack. Do the flexibility masterclass, because I now know that for the first time ever, you've committed and you're in our coaching program, which means you've made all this progress with your flexibility from trying to piece together the puzzle from watching our YouTube videos and watching these videos. You now have access to the full programs, bro. Get started on that flexibility masterclass. Do phase 1, and I will be releasing phase 2 soon, and watch your middle splits improve.
Yep, you heard it right here.
Yeah, watch it happen, mate. It's going to when you follow the program and you learn from my mistakes and my successes and what I've been able to recreate with our members here. You are going to see some real improvement. And the last thing that I'll say is, in my experience, my middle splits haven't gotten that much lower, actually, really at all in the last couple of years. But I'm getting better. I'm able to access them easier when I'm cold, and I'm able to control the range more the further I go down this. And I do believe, actually I don't really believe it, I know it, that certain pelvises will only ever go to a certain point because of all the things that we're talking about, right, Phil? There's a certain point where your bone structure, your passive structures are going to stop you from going further. And I've just learned to accept that, and I've learned to accept that I'm just never going to have those ridiculous 200-degree splits that some of these female gymnasts that we see
and some guys.
Yep.
Quick shout out before we finish up. Anyone up in the Brisbane area, hit Quack up. He is a weapon and a great personal trainer too. If you're looking for someone who can help you implement some of the stuff that we're doing and you want to see someone face to face, not online,
Yep.
Give Quokka a DM, mate. He's a beast.
Yeah, he
Some of
is.
the stuff
Do
that he can
acrobatics,
do,
or
yeah.
what's
very
called the
cool.
bar
He's
stuff.
on the bar
Calisthenics.
stuff. Yep.
No, but like the swinging stuff.
Oh,
The
yeah,
swinging
that's
stuff.
Cali, yeah.
Yeah, no, don't they,
It's
isn't
street-
there a name
street
for
workouts?
it, Quok? Yeah, street
Street
workouts. I think it's
workouts.
called,
Yeah, tell us,
Damn
Quok,
cool.
what is it called? The
So
Cali
cool.
that you do on the bar.
I think it's called street workouts, but
I thought
very
it was
cool.
just calisthenics, but anyway.
So, thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you really want to get started and you want to start your journey to awesomeness, to true strength, flexibility, and balance between both, get the UMS Foundations Phase 1 program that's on sale right now. It's going to, even if that's all you do with us, if you only do that one program, you will learn so much about how to train for structural balance, flexibility, freestyle. There you
Freestyle.
go. It's just called freestyle. What up?
Idiot. All right, let's bring this in for a landing. Freestyle calisthenics. There you go. See?
None of us were right, mate. You
Oh,
said it was just called calisthenics.
Yeah, well, anyway. He's a weapon at it. So
And
check
thanks
it out.
for the question. If you do have any physio-related questions, make sure to tag me in them, and then we'll get to them on the Monday shows.
Yeah. Last time, guys, for those of you listening on the podcast, watching on the YouTube replay, if you are not already, get yourself over to the UMS Movement Mastermind. It's a private Facebook group where we stream these podcast recordings live. You can interact with us, you can get coaching, and it's just a wicked group of driven people becoming athletes.
Yeah, and the numbers have been really going up on the podcast lately, so it's nice to see the little analytics line keep going up. So for all those out there who have shared it with people, thank you so much for that. And I'd keep sharing.
Keep sharing, keep subscribing, keep sharing. And if you really, really want to make Phil's day, leave a little voice recorded comment.
Yeah, do it. It's on all
We'll give you a
in the
shout out
description.
on the show.
Okay, can I just say one little quick shout out here? Happy birthday to Blakely. One of our moderators, one of our first online students, and one of the legends of the UMS online program. Blakely, it is your birthday today. Although, because you're in America, we're probably getting a little bit of a time warp here because if he's watching this right now, it's probably his birthday tomorrow. Because
we'll extend his birthday.
Yeah, well, happy birthday
Anyway,
for tomorrow.
we'll see.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Blakely. Love what you do, brother. Thanks for bringing it and being such a valued member of the tribe.
Yep.
All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. We're kicking off a big week tomorrow. I'm not going to give anything away just yet, but it's about making you all awesome. See you soon.
See ya.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.